Hey, all this week and next week, and maybe the next week after that, we're going to talk about one of the most dominant themes throughout the scriptures. Today, we're looking at what's called the first mention of the word sin. Khata in the Hebrew and Hamartia in the Greek. We're going to look at this and do kind of a deep dive for the next at least 2 weeks, maybe 3, because you and I, we all struggle with sin. And it can be one of the most misunderstood concepts, most neglected concepts, most ignored concepts in the scriptures. And it's critical that we understand that what sin does, what sin is, and how to defeat sin. The first mention of sin in the third story of the Bible, the story of the two brothers, Cain and Abel, is one where sin defeats someone. And certainly we've all felt that in our own story. We've all been defeated by sin. We'll talk about how to defeat sin and how to do our best to not repeat sin. So over the next few weeks, we're going to tackle that. So let me just give you a little bit of an overview of our Genesis story of Cain and Abel, the two brothers. Interesting enough, we've been taking a slow look at deep saturation from Genesis 1, 2, and 3. We just finished about 14 weeks, and we've gotten past the first 3 chapters. Yay! We're doing that because in the first few chapters of the book of Genesis, most of the patterns are set that will go throughout the rest of the Hebrew scriptures, in fact, the rest of the Bible. So if I don't understand these patterns, much of the Bible will be very mysterious, difficult to understand, and certainly difficult to interpret and apply to our own lives. So we're trying to kind of build our acumen, our ability to look at the scriptures, start seeing the patterns, and we all need help with that. I needed help with that. Big shout out to the Bible Project. Those guys have helped me a ton. If you haven't checked out their material, just Google Bible Project and you will find a treasure trove of goodies. And you can get lost in their material and get fed in their material, get equipped through their material. So anyhow, let's talk a little bit about the big picture of this narrative. So it is the tale of two brothers. It comes on the heels of Adam and Eve being evicted from the Garden of Eden in the end of chapter 3. And we have a promise that we looked at, spent several weeks kind of digging into in chapter 3, verse 15, called the Proto-Evangelion, the first mention of the gospel, the first good news, the first promise that God gives us for reconciliation, where it's the idea of a serpent crusher. And the rest of the Old Testament is going to be looking for this serpent crusher. Where is he? Who is he? How will he do it? And we're given this consequence that God levies on the serpent, says, I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed or offspring and her seed or offspring. And then the promise, he, from the woman's seed, he, a singular masculine, is going to crush the head of the serpent, not crush the seed of the serpent, but crush the head of the serpent himself. So we have that beautiful promise in 3:15. And then, so you might be saying, well, why are we backtracking? Because we've got to always kind of go back to gain reference, to go back to kind of get context, go back to understand the understanding of words and patterns and themes. And so this seed pattern is going to go all the way through the scriptures. So it's critical that we kind of understand, okay, well, what's the seed of the serpent? What's the seed of the woman? The seed of the serpent's not little baby snakes, but it's those who've been bitten by the snake. It's those who've been, I mean that metaphorically, who've been influenced by the serpent. And when that influence takes place, we break from the seed of the woman and become a seed of the serpent, a tool of the enemy, partnering with darkness. This is true of anyone that's apart from Jesus. They don't have to be awful, terrible, no good, very bad people. They just have to be walking in the dark instead of the light. They just have to be deceived about the person of Jesus rather than convinced about the person of Jesus. So as we see in this fourth chapter, the seed of the serpent and the woman's going to get teased out. Interesting enough, it'll be done through two genealogies. So we have two brothers, Cain born first, and then his brother Abel. It's interesting. Abel's name in Hebrew means a mist, like here for one moment and gone the next. And that's all he was. He just shows up for a few verses and he's gone. His story is repeated then in the New Testament, so he's not forgotten, gone but not forgotten. Cain's born, Abel's born, and then fast forward to they're adults. They're both making offerings. So two brothers, two offerings. Cain, the farmer, brings an offering from the ground, the fruit of his crops. Abel brings an offering of the firstborn of his flocks. So there's going to be something that happens here, and we're not given great detail about this, which is indicative of Hebrew literature. It's pretty discreet in what it gives us. It's pretty. It doesn't give us a bunch of detail. It's not like modern day 20th century literature. Authors of today, of the last 100 years, give lots of detail. Wasn't so for the Hebrew authors. They gave sparse detail, very conservative amount of information, making us ponder, read, compare one story to another, which is critical. We're going to be doing a lot of that, comparing one story to another. So we see that this fall that happened in the garden is now escalating just outside the garden. Two brothers, two offerings, two genealogies, one in chapter 4, one in chapter 5, one of the seed of the serpent, one of the seed of the woman, and two choices on one person, Cain, kind of the person that the text is talking to us about, and all of chapter 4 really kind of revolves around Cain. Cain being born to Adam and Eve, Cain's failure, making the wrong choice. He chose Ra, evil, instead of Tov and Ra. So instead of good, he chose evil. Killed his brother. He had a choice not to. God warned him, sin's crouching at the door, but he made the wrong choice. And then we see Cain having a child, and then we see the seed of Cain, and then the very end of chapter 4, kind of just take a moment, read the first couple verses, the last couple verses. Starts out with Eve being pregnant, ends with Eve being pregnant. Starts out with two brothers, one dies, ends with two brothers, Cain and Seth. So now that seed of the serpent is going to be Cain's seed. Cain's going to continue some of this serpent seed. And then the seed of the woman is now going to be through Seth. And we're going to see that genealogy in chapter 5. So those genealogies matter. They're kind of boring. We don't understand them. We usually blow past them. But when we read them closely, there's clarity. At the end of Cain's 7 lines from Adam to Lamech, we're going to see kind of a pop of evil, a pop of Ra that's going to happen. And at the end of Seth's line, 10 descendants down, we're going to see a pop of good and a pop of righteousness. So there's your overview. Hope I see you tomorrow. We'll dig into it more. God bless. Have a great day. Bye.